Hey everyone, did you know that over 90% of you watching right now haven't hit that subscribe button? If you enjoy our content, take a second to subscribe. It's free and it really helps us keep bringing you great stories every day.
The last time I saw my father alive, he gave me a key. We were standing in the middle of his old workshop, the air thick with dust and silence. The place hadn't changed in years. Rusted tools hanging on the walls, half-finished projects sitting exactly where he'd left them, as if he might return any minute to finish what he started. He pressed the small brass key into my palm without a word. His hands, once strong and steady, now shook from the illness. I looked down at it, confused. "To the drawer," he said, voice thin. "You'll understand when it's time." 2 weeks later, he was gone. He left behind a modest will. No drama, no surprises. The house went to me. The shop, too. My sister got the family car and some savings. My mother, long gone from our lives, wasn't mentioned. The funeral was quiet. A few close friends, some old neighbors. My sister cried, I didn't. Not because I didn't love him, but because it didn't feel real yet. That night, after everyone left, I went to the shop alone. I stood there for a long time before I finally walked over to the old oak workbench in the corner. The drawer was locked. I pulled the key from my pocket. Inside, I found a thick manila envelope, my name written on it in my father's careful, blocky handwriting. I opened it with shaking hands. Photos, dozens of them. Receipts, printed emails, handwritten notes. And at the very bottom, 2 letters, one addressed to me, the other to someone else. I sat down on the edge of the workbench and started reading. At first, none of it made sense. And then, all at once, it did. The woman I had been married to for 5 years, Maya, wasn't who I thought she was. My father had suspected something long before I did. He had gathered everything quietly, never telling me, never confronting her, always waiting for what? I didn't know. Maya had been having an affair, but not just recently. It had been going on since before we were even engaged. And not just with anyone, with someone I worked with, someone I considered a friend. And worse, there was money involved. My money. Technically, our money. But now I realized she had been funneling it away slowly, carefully, into a separate account in her name alone, under the guise of investments, joint savings, future plans. My father's letter was simple. He said he hadn't told me because he wanted me to see it for myself, that I was too trusting, too willing to see the best in people, that sometimes the most dangerous lies come with the softest voices. He wrote that he didn't want me to react in anger. He wanted me to wait, to plan, to walk away not as a victim, but as someone in control. I stared at the papers for what felt like hours, and then, for the first time in years, I felt something shift inside me. Not rage, clarity. I went home that night and looked at Maya as if for the first time. She was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone, wrapped in a blanket. She smiled when she saw me. "You okay?" she asked. "You've been gone a while." "Just needed some time," I said. She stood and walked over, wrapping her arms around me. "I'm here if you need me," she whispered. I hugged her back, and in that moment, I knew exactly what I needed to do. But I wouldn't do it today. I'd wait, just like my father did. The next few days were strange. I watched her more carefully now, the way she kept her phone close, how she suddenly started wearing perfume again when she said she was just running errands, how she started being oddly affectionate, like she was compensating for something. I didn't confront her. Instead, I started copying everything from the envelope, scanning it, storing it in multiple locations. I started checking our accounts, tracing the patterns of how she moved the money, how she disguised transfers with vague labels and split transactions. I made appointments with a lawyer, quietly. Chose one in another city, someone far removed from our circle. I opened my own account, transferred my direct deposits, removed myself as a co-owner on everything I legally could without raising suspicion. I played my part at home, told her I loved her, let her believe I was distracted by grief. She comforted me, played the role of the grieving wife. I let her. She didn't know I already knew everything, that every step she took now was being documented, mirrored, preserved. And then came the breaking point, a business trip. She said she'd be gone for 4 days, some planning retreat with coworkers. She kissed me goodbye at the airport like nothing was wrong. I smiled and waved like a fool in love. That night, I checked into a hotel near the resort where they were staying, the same one listed on the booking confirmation she had sent herself. One I only knew about because I'd gained access to her travel profile weeks earlier. I waited. I saw her, with him, laughing at the pool bar, sharing drinks, disappearing into a room. I didn't confront them. I didn't even take new photos. I already had everything I needed. I went home the next day, made dinner, and set the table. When she walked in that night, pretending her flight was delayed, I acted like I hadn't seen a thing. I poured her wine, we ate together, we even watched a movie. And as she fell asleep beside me, completely unaware that the world she thought she controlled was already gone, I smiled, because my father had taught me well, and because revenge wasn't about destruction, it was about freedom. The next morning, Maya made pancakes. It was one of those rare moments when she was trying too hard. She floated through the kitchen, humming, plating strawberries like we were newlyweds again. I sat at the table, sipping coffee, watching her like a stranger. She didn't notice. That was the funny part, how easy it was for her to pretend and how confident she was that I hadn't caught on. Maybe she thought I was still the same man who believed every excuse, who handed over his trust like it came with no price tag. But that version of me died the night I opened the drawer in my father's shop. I was thinking we should get away next month, she said, flipping the pancakes. Somewhere warm, just you and me. I smiled. That sounds nice. She set the plate in front of me, kissed the top of my head like nothing had shifted, and I thanked her like I wasn't planning my quiet exit. While she showered, I called my lawyer. The paperwork was ready. All the evidence was cataloged, organized. My finances were separated. The house, still in my name from before we married, had never been added to our joint assets. She'd tried to get on the deed once years ago, but I had forgotten, or so I said. Sometimes forgetfulness is a gift. That afternoon, while she was out running errands, I finished packing what mattered. My father's tools, some books, a few clothes. I left the rest. Let her have the furniture, the dishes, the things she'd chosen to fill our house. It wasn't my home anymore. I didn't leave a note, I just left. I drove 3 hours north to the same cabin where my father used to take us fishing. It was small, tucked between pine trees with no neighbors in sight. The silence hit like a wave. No lies, no pretending. Just wind through the trees and the sound of my own breathing. The first night alone, I didn't sleep. Not because I was sad, but because for the first time in years, I felt the weight of someone else's manipulation lift off my chest. She called the next morning. 5 times. I didn't answer. Then came the texts. Where are you? Are you okay? Please call me. I'm worried. I read each one and said nothing. By the second day, her tone changed. If this is about the money, we can talk. It's not what you think. Can we please fix this? I still didn't respond. And then, when the divorce papers were delivered to her office by courier, along with a separate envelope containing copies of the evidence, she called again. But this time, she didn't leave a message. I turned off my phone and sat outside in the cold, watching the trees bend in the wind. Let her wonder. Let her sit with the truth in silence. It was her turn. By the end of the week, my lawyer called. She's rattled, she said, panicking but quiet. Probably lawyer shopping. Let her, I said. She'll realize she's already lost. In the days that followed, I returned to the city once, quietly. I met with a notary, transferred the last assets, and visited my father's workshop. I dusted off the bench, opened the drawer again, and read his letter one more time. The words still hit the same. You don't need to burn the bridge. Just never walk across it again. When I got back to the cabin, there was an email waiting in the inbox I hadn't checked in a week. It was from Maya. Subject line, please read. I almost deleted it without opening it. But some part of me was curious. What does a person say when they realize they've been caught with no exit? She said she was sorry. Not the kind of sorry that fixes anything, but the kind that comes after you lose control. She admitted to feeling trapped and confused. Said she thought I'd never find out, that it had started as a mistake, but eventually became something else, something she couldn't walk away from. She claimed she still loved me, that she wanted to fix what we had, that the man she was seeing had cut things off, and she realized too late what she'd thrown away. I read it twice, and then I closed the laptop. Not out of anger, because it no longer mattered. Love doesn't survive betrayal like that. It endures things, stress, hardship, distance. But it doesn't survive repeated deception delivered with a smile. I stayed at the cabin for another week. Each day was simple: coffee, walks, old books. I started journaling, drew again, cleaned the old shed, fixed a leaky pipe that my father never got around to. I breathed. Really.
Breathed. Then, slowly, I stepped back into the world. Not the world she and I shared. That one was gone. I found a small place in a neighboring town, close enough to the city, but far enough to feel new. I opened a little repair shop. Small electronics, bikes, things people never bother fixing anymore but can't bear to throw away. There's something beautiful about putting broken things back together, especially when you've lived through the opposite. Customers trickled in, locals, quiet people. No one asked about my past. I didn't volunteer it. Eventually, people got to know me as just Ben, the guy who could fix old radios or rewire a lamp without charging too much. I liked that. I liked being known for something honest again. Then one day, a woman named Leah walked into the shop. She brought in a vintage camera, said it belonged to her father, and asked if I could make it work again. She smiled when she talked, not nervously or with an angle, just kind. We talked, first about the camera, then about other things. She came back a week later to pick it up, said it worked better than she remembered, asked if I wanted to grab coffee sometime. I said yes, not because I was looking for anything, but because for the first time, I felt ready to say yes to something unconnected to the past. Our first coffee was simple. We didn't talk about exes or scars or where we used to be. Just books, travel, favorite foods. She laughed at my jokes. I listened to her stories. We didn't try to impress each other. We just showed up. And it felt easy. We kept meeting. Always simple, always light. But every time, I left with a feeling I hadn't had in years. Hope. Not the naive kind, the kind built slowly, carefully. Weeks later, as we walked through the farmer's market together, she turned to me and said something I didn't expect. "You seem like someone who's lost a lot." I nodded. "I have. But you also seem like someone who's learned from it." "I hope so," I said. She smiled. "It shows." That night, I thought about everything that had brought me to this point. The betrayal, the lies, the silence. My father's final gift, his faith in my strength. He didn't try to protect me from pain. He gave me the tools to survive it, to rise above it, to turn it into something new. I didn't get revenge on Maya. I didn't expose her to the world or scream about what she did. I simply let her lose the version of me she'd never truly valued. And in doing so, I found a version of myself I never knew I was capable of becoming. Spring came slowly that year. By the time the snow had fully melted, the town had transformed. Sidewalks buzzed with weekend chatter. The cafes rolled out their patio seating, and kids on bikes zigzagged down the narrow streets like birds finally released from a cage. I found myself sitting on a park bench more often than not, sipping coffee and just watching life go by. It felt strange at first, being so still, not waiting for the next argument, the next lie, the next excuse, just existing without the tension I had grown used to carrying. Like setting down a heavy bag and realizing you'd forgotten what your back felt like without it. I didn't hear from Maya again. Her last attempt at contact had been the email. No phone calls, no dramatic showings at my door. I don't know if it was guilt, shame, or just pride that kept her away. Maybe all of it. maybe none. But I was grateful because silence was exactly what I needed. I'd already lived in a house where the truth had to be hunted down like a criminal. I didn't want that kind of noise in my life anymore. I didn't want to second guess glances or decode texts or wonder what version of the truth I'd get that day. I wanted honesty, simplicity, and somewhere along the way I'd started finding it. Leah and I had grown closer, though we didn't call it anything. She never pushed. She understood space without needing to fill it. We'd spend hours together doing nothing, reading, fixing things in the shop, walking by the river, and it never felt empty. One evening, deserved to. We didn't need to fill the silence. Some truths just want space. Weeks passed, work was steady. I'd become the go-to guy in town for small repairs, and people had started leaving little thank you notes and cookies with their pickups. One woman left a stack of old records just because I had fixed her late husband's turntable. Said he would have wanted someone to enjoy them. I found joy in the little things, sanding a piece of old wood until it looked new again, getting grease under my nails, making dinner for one without feeling lonely. And slowly, without realizing it, I became someone I respected. One afternoon, as I was organizing the back shelf in the shop, I found the envelope again, the one from my father. I sat down and opened it one more time. I didn't need to, but I wanted to. The photos, the receipts, the letter. I read his words again. Don't let betrayal define you. Let it refine you. He had written that before he knew when the end would come, before the doctors gave him the timeline, before the days got smaller and quieter. And still he was thinking of me, trying to protect me, not from heartbreak, but from becoming bitter. I closed the envelope and placed it in a small lockbox I kept behind the counter. Not to bury it, but to store it properly. Not everything painful needs to be displayed. Some of it just needs to be acknowledged and filed away. That evening, Leah stopped by with takeout. We ate on the front porch, the breeze carrying the smell of rain and spring blossoms. She handed me a small wrapped package. What's this? I asked. Just open it. Inside was a vintage compass, old, worn, but still beautiful. It reminded me of you, she said. You always know where you're going, even if you don't say it. I turned it over in my hand. It's funny, I said. I used to feel so lost. You weren't, she replied. You just needed to stop walking in circles. I looked at her then, not just as someone I enjoyed spending time with, but as someone who had come into my life when I needed to believe in quiet goodness again. We didn't talk about labels, we didn't need to, because we were showing up for ourselves and for each other. One morning I got a letter in the mail. No return address. I didn't recognize the handwriting, but I knew who it was from. It was from Maya. Just a single sheet. She said she'd finalized everything, that she wasn't fighting the terms, that she was starting over in another city. She didn't ask for anything. Not forgiveness, not a conversation. Just said she hoped I was doing well, and that she was sorry. I folded the letter and placed it in the box with the rest. And that was it. The last page of a story I had once thought would never end. But stories do end. Sometimes quietly, sometimes without applause. But ending is not the same as failing. Sometimes it's the beginning of something better. 6 months later, I visited my father's grave for the first time since the funeral. The grass had grown in, the headstone settled. I sat beside it for a long time, hand resting on the ground. You were right, I said. Not about her, about me. I didn't know how strong I was until I had to be. I told him about the shop, about Leah, about the compass. I told him I missed him. And then I stood, brushed off my jeans, and walked away. Not with heaviness, but with peace. On the way home, I passed by the lake, the same lake where Maya and I had once picnicked. I parked the truck, stepped out, and walked down to the water. I skipped a rock across the surface, watched it bounce once, twice, then sink. Not everything floats, but some things, some people, they rise again. That night, I wrote something in my journal. Just one line. You don't have to prove your strength to anyone. Living well is proof enough. Then I turned off the light, rolled onto my side, and fell asleep easily. No secrets in the house, no tension under the roof. Just the kind of quiet that doesn't hide anything. The kind that feels earned. The kind that lasts.